Alright, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Game Haven Geeks. I just wanted to take some time and kind of go over a local event that I recently attended that I thought was a lot of fun and interesting, and tell you a little bit about the event and how I did. It was a local Grand Prix trial. It was held at another friend of mine's store, Oasis Game, and it was obviously for buys for the upcoming Grand Prix San Jose, and the format was M13 sealed. And we had 25 or 26 people. I don't exactly remember how many participated, but it was 5 rounds of Swiss, and you were given 6 packs of M13 to build your deck with. And this is basically the deck that I came up with. It's kind of hard to see laid out like this, so I'll go through it as I progress through here the video. But what I first did when I opened my packs, and it's pretty regular that you'll see people do this, is I went through and I organized the colors based on red, blue, black, green, white, obviously. And I quickly went through and decided which colors looked good and which didn't look so good. And I'll go over a few of the reasons why I chose black and white as the two colors to play. As I sorted the different colors from this pool of cards, I found that green had some really good ramp spells. It had 2 Farseeks, as you can see here. It also had 2 Prey-Upons. Prey-Upon I found is a spell that it's decent removal, but it just isn't one that if I have a choice of other spells that I'm willing to put a lot of faith into. There's just so many circumstances where either I don't have a creature or I can't target their creature with Prey Upon, so it's not a spell that I really like for this format. I had a couple decent creatures. There was Acidic Slimes, Spiked Baloth, Vastwood Gorger, Force Mage, Centaur Courser. So I mean, there was a few good spells in here, but nothing really stood out as like a bomb or that it would really fit well in my deck. So I quickly set that one aside. The next one I took a look at was blue. Blue had some really good counter spells. It had Essence Scatter and Rewind. It also had Sleep and Switcheroo. Switcheroo is kind of like the new bribery type control magic spell, but it's not nearly as good because you have to give them one of your creatures first off, and both have to have creatures, and it's just too easy to get around. There's so many sack effects and other things. So, although it's decent, it just didn't really stand out as an excellent spell to me. And the creature base, although it had a couple creatures that were really good, like Windrake, pretty good, evasion with flying, Arctic Haven, same thing. And if I had ended up playing white, this would have been a pretty good one with Lifelink. And then, that was about it. I mean, there's other decent creatures like Water Courser, but, not enough to really make me feel comfortable playing blue. So I set blue aside as well. Red was a little bit more difficult initially just because one of my rares, which is a playable rare, Hellion Crucible, was in that set, or in this stack. So I had that. I also had triple Slagstorm, which can be a really good removal spell if you're playing against the right deck. The only problem with Turn to Slag is obviously it costs 5, which sometimes you need to remove a spell well before 5 mana. And the other problem is it's double red, so oftentimes you'll get to 5 mana and not hit the double. Needless to say, though, it was tempting. I had some mediocre creatures like Dragon Hatchling and Goblin Jester and Canyon Minotaur. I had some slightly above mediocre creatures like Fire Elemental, Krenko's Command, Slumbering Dragon, but that was about it. So outside of the triple Turn to Slag, I just didn't really see red getting me there, going all the way for me. So I set that one aside as well. Now this was the 24 plus 16 land card deck that I made. So I started out with black because it had the best removal. I have a murder, I have a coward fear, and I also have a public execution. Coward fear is just great. I mean, it's wiped whole boards for me before. Murder is good because it's spot removal. Very few creatures it can't kill, and then public execution is actually 3 and 4 for 1 me in events. You know, combining with blocking or other tricks, it's a really good card as well. So I really like that. And I also like the creature base. I consider Vile Rebirth kind of a pseudo removal, pseudo creature spell because you can cast a 2/2 zombie as an instant. It does require them having a creature or you having a creature in your graveyard, but I never really had a problem when I needed it to use it. I also had 2 times Crippling Blight, which is also pseudo removal and pseudo evasion. You can put it on a bigger creature so they can't block, and it also kill a lot of little creatures and even some pretty important creatures in this environment. So I really like that as well. I stuck in a Disentomb because I have some pretty awesome creatures like Sarah Angel, and I also had a Disciple of Bolas, and I also had a Blood Hunter Bat. So I had multiple creatures that I thought would be worth bringing back in case they were killed. And I had 6 cards that had Exalted in this build as well. I have Angelic Benediction, Duskmantle Prowler, Guardians of Krosa, Knight of Glory, Aven Squire, and Knight of Infamy. So I got both the black and white knights of this set, essentially. Protection from white and protection from black. So overall, this just screamed to me as being the best pool. I also got 2 Ravenous Rats. I have a Dark Favor, which combines really well with Tormented Soul. And overall, just felt really comfortable with this deck. The only card that I had that I haven't mentioned, a couple of them, was I had 1 Captain's Call, and I also had an Intrepid Hero that made the cut as well. And also in white, I had Pacifism. So overall, this felt like by far the best build. Initially, I had 17 land and 1 less Crippling Blight, but I played a couple games play testing with Jeff Sidner, a good friend of mine, and he actually didn't mention this, but I noticed that I was drawing a lot of land and my curve is actually pretty low, so I decided to downsize 1 land. The only other thing I had a little bit of difficulty with deciding was whether or not to play my artifacts. I had some pretty good artifacts, but the one that made it debatable was Trading Post. Trading Post is really good in this format. It has so many abilities, gaining life, blockers for 1 life. I mean, being able to draw cards, it cycles itself essentially, and other things, and also being able to return artifacts by sacking creatures. It combines well with Captain's Call, combines well with against removal, so it essentially recurs itself quite a bit. But I just didn't really like any of the other artifacts I had. Primal Clay is good because you can get a 2/2 flyer out of it, or a 3/3 beater, or even a wall. Elixir of Immortality is decent, but it's just not a card that I really think is worth playing. I like more aggressive things in my deck than something that gains me life. And Phyrexian Hulk, I'm just not a big fan of either. I'll play it occasionally, but that's only if I don't have anything better to play. So I ended up with this build. I had 9 swamps because I was definitely heavier in black, and only 7 forests. I only had 1 double white spell, so I felt 7 plains rather, was appropriate. Having more than that just didn't feel necessary. I wanted to make sure I was hitting my black mana early in the game, and I needed some double black for some of my spells, like Murder and Coward Fear, and those spells often come in handy earlier than Sarah Angel. So anyway, that's the 16 land and 40 total of a 40 card deck. I never recommend going over 40 cards just because you want to get to your best spells. I mean, there's no reason to play a 41st card if you're playing your 40 best spells. That's usually the way to go. I ended up going 3-0 in the Swiss, and then drawing twice in the top 8 with this deck. The only game loss I had was for keeping a questionable hand of 2 land and then not drawing another one. I kept 2 white mana and didn't draw into a black, and ended up being ran over pretty quick. I will admit I got lucky game 3 of that same match. My opponent kept a 3-land hand and I kept a 1-land hand, and I drew into land and he didn't. So, although had he drawn into land, I can't say I would have won, but I think my chances were still pretty good that I would win. But who knows? That's part of Magic that a lot of people hate, but I've learned to come to terms with, you might say, is that you're gonna get mana screwed. Sometimes you're gonna get there if you keep bad hands. Sometimes you're not. I'm definitely not saying that I should have kept that hand. I may have been a little bit on tilt and just may not have cared. But from what I remember, it just seemed like the amount of spells I had, I should have been fine if I drew one land, and then it worked out. So anyway, I ended up 3-0ing and then drawing twice in the top 8. And in the top 8, Jeff Sidner was one of the players, Mike Callahan, Aaron Muranaka, quite a few good players. Trish, which was my friend Alex's significant other, was in it. There's a couple other people, and I'm sorry if I don't remember your names. I met a lot of new faces and saw a lot of old faces, so it was pretty fun to go up and see that many people playing sealed. That was basically my sealed deck. I'll set that aside. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about my draft deck. I went red-black, as you can see. My first few picks were actually red. So my first pick in pack 1 was Flames of the Firebrand. My second pick in pack 2 was Mob Flunkies, and literally my third pick was Chandra's Fury. So I felt pretty confident going red, but it quickly dried up, and I found myself diving into the black. The first pack I got some pretty good black picks. I got a Missing Strain. I ended up getting Duty Bound Dead. I ended up getting Sun and Blood, Mind Rot, Cower and Fear. Quite a few good black spells in pack 1. Pack 2, I actually solidified my black. I ended up getting Vampire Nighthawk, a couple Blood Throne Vampires. Ended up getting past, from the right, I ended up getting past both my Tremendous Souls in pack 2 and one of my Dark Favors that I ended up with in the deck. And I think I got a late Vile Rebirth. Now pack 3 really just set the deck apart as one of the better decks I've ever drafted. I was past early Xanthrid Gorgon. I think it's a really good spell. I was able to pick up a couple mid-range creatures like Servant of Nephrox and Giant Scorpion. I ended up drafting 1 copy of Bloodhunter Bats, which is always amazing. I ended up with 1 copy of Vile Rebirth, which I'm a big fan of that card. I also ended up with 1 Veilborn Ghoul, the Ring of Xanthrid, which I got actually pretty late, a second Dark Favor, and Mark of the Vampire. So that rounded out my 24 cards. I'll quickly spread it out by casting costs. You can kind of see my initial idea was to go red, maybe red-green, but as things progressed, I just found that wasn't going to be possible. My curve actually ended up pretty decent. I had a lot of early drops and a few late drops, but overall my deck was extremely fast. I don't think I dropped a single game in the top 8, except when I made it to the finals against Jeff. I opted to actually scoop the Jeff in the finals rather than play it out, although I feel, after watching some of his matches, I feel pretty strongly that I probably would have won that match. His deck was really good though, so it could have gone either way. I also opted with this deck to go with 16 land again because it just wasn't any really high-end spells I was too worried about. I mean, Zathra Gorgon, yes, but I don't mind pitching the Hellborn Ghoul to discarding or other spells like Mind Rot, and we get it back pretty easily. I ended up getting one Dragon Skull Summit and an Evolving Wilds to help with the mana fix. And I played 9 swamps and only 5 mountains because I had both the Dragon Skull and the Evolving Wilds, and I only had 3 red spells, so I wasn't nearly as concerned with getting red mana. Probably in retrospect may have gone down to just 4, just because only 3 red spells. It doesn't really require that I get red that often, especially when I have a potentially right now as it's built 7 red sources. Anyway, in the semifinals or the quarterfinals rather, I played Mike Callahan, and the deck performed really well. I was able to get out early Permanent Souls and put on Dark Favor game 1, and then game 2 I was able to get out Vampire Nighthawk with a Dark Favor on it and equip it with a Ring of Zathrid. So it really didn't go very far for him. And anytime he started to come back, I'd have plenty of removal to get rid of his guys, whether it was Coward Fear. I remember one time he was actually going to but enchant Mark Immunity on his own copy of Veilborn Ghoul, and I was able to respond with the Chandra's Fury and kill it. It's pretty good card advantage. So I beat Mike Callahan in the semifinals. I believe the gentleman I played, his name was Kyle. Honestly, I don't remember too much. It seemed like game 1 didn't last very long. I was able to overrun him pretty quick. In game 2, he got mana hosed again and didn't really put up much of a fight. It didn't last very long. I think the whole match lasted maybe 8 minutes. So I was waiting for the finals for a good 30 minutes. And, again, saw a lot of what Jeff and Trish were playing their match, and but Jeff asked me if I was going, and I told him that I probably wasn't because we have Utah State at Game Haven on October 13th, the same day as the Grand Prix, and unless I can find a team and find someone to cover for me for that tournament, I don't think I'm going to go. But the main reason I played in this event was because we are planning to travel to Boise for PTQ in 2 weeks on September 15th, and I really wanted to get a better handle on the format. I've done a few drafts on Moto, and I've played a couple pre-releases, but I haven't really had a huge opportunity to play M13 sealed. So I was really glad and really glad with my performance. I think I did pretty well for the limited events I've done in this format. I think overall I've got a pretty good handle of what's going on in the format. Some of the other picks that I got, as you can see, I was going to go red-green. I got a couple Titanic Gross and a Flint Hip 4. I ended up with a few good blue spells, but overall I think I caught the signals pretty well and was able to build a really good deck. And black right now is just so amazing in this format. I mean, black's got some of the best removal. Black's got some of the best creatures. You got Vampire Nighthawk. You got this Bloodhunter Bat. I mean, Tormented Soul. I mean, those are 3 of the best common creatures in the format. And some of the rares are pretty amazing too. I'd have to say that this is probably my favorite uncommon in the format as far as removal, just because you can spread it out and kill so many things. Either that or this one. I mean, they're both just amazing. So I got a little lucky with how things went with my picks, but overall I felt I did pretty well, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was good for you, and hopefully I'll have a couple more videos uploaded this week about upcoming events. Just just going to close with a couple upcoming events this Saturday. As you saw in the last video, we will be having at Game Haven in West Jordan and in Bountiful a mini master event. It's called the Magic Celebration. We've actually taken it a step farther and created what we call the Magic Celebration or the Utah Celebration for the Utah Food Bank. And basically what we're doing is we're collecting donations. Anybody who brings in a cash donation or a food donation will receive 10% off any item in store. And also we'll be selling raffle tickets, $1 a ticket, and we'll be giving away tons of prizes. One of the prizes includes free entry into the Grand Prix on October 13th in San Jose. That was graciously donated by Tim Shields of Cascade Games. You can find those guys at cascadegames.com. Other things we'll be giving away is, judge promos, sealed product, games, all sorts of stuff. So you'll definitely want to come in on September 8th and play in that free mini master event that you've heard about on Wizard's site, and also donate to the Utah Food Bank. And finally, the other event that I really want to plug right now is the Ravnica pre-release, Return to Ravnica, September 20th and 29th. I mean, if you haven't been watching some of the spoilers, I literally just saw about an hour ago the spoiler for Niv Mizzet, the new one. It's just insane. I mean, this set's going to be really amazing. I don't think we've seen a set this good since the last Ravnica block, and I don't think this set's going to disappoint at all from the hype from the previous one. So if you haven't signed up yet for a pre-release, come in and choose your guild. It's only $25 to sign up, $32 for a team, and you can choose your guild. The first 10 people for each guild get to choose, meaning that once 10 people have chosen the guild for that specific pre-release event, we're not going to let anybody else choose their guild until the day of the pre-release. So come in early and get signed up for one of our events that whole weekend, starting Friday at midnight all the way through Sunday. And I hope to see you soon. Again, this is Jeff Deering with Game Haven Geeks, and thanks for watching.